The $10 billion joint venture between Vedanta Group and FoxConn to build a semiconductor manufacturing plant in the country has ended. The two companies announced on the 30th of May that they had mutually agreed to end their deal. In a statement, Vedanta Group said that it was, I quote, disappointed that the deal had ended, but that it was committed to the semiconductor industry in India. The government has set a goal of making India a global hub for semiconductor manufacturing. In order to achieve this goal, the government has offered a number of incentives to semiconductor manufacturers. The government is said to be investing in the development of the semiconductor ecosystem in India, including the creation of a semiconductor design center and semiconductor testing facility. The cooperation between Taiwan and India on semiconductors is a positive development for the global semiconductor industry, and the cooperation is set to help ensure that the global semiconductor industry remains strong and can address the challenges that it is facing today. Well, the industry is expected to play a major role in the Indian economy in the coming years as well. The industry is expected to create millions of jobs and contribute billions of dollars to the Indian GDP. The Semicon Atmanirbharta initiative is a long-term project, but it is an important one for India. The initiative has the potential to create jobs, boost the Indian economy and make India more secure. Let's dive into this important discussion for India in more ways than one. Jayajit Bhattacharya, President of the Center for Digi Payments, joins us on the show. Arun Mampazi, semiconductor expert, also with us on the program. Vijay Sardana, senior economist, joining us on the program as well. Sumit Peer, senior political commentator, joins us on the show. And last but by no means the least, Mr. Gautam Mukherjee, senior journalist, also with us on the program. Arun, I'll begin with you if you can hear me.
Yeah, I hope I'm audible too.
Right. Arun, well, on one hand, you've had this disappointment where, this project was cancelled and Vedanta is obviously not giving up at this juncture. But the fact of the matter is that for India to become that hub, for India to become, that new option for the world when it comes to supply chain as well as, technological dependency, this is an industry which the country needs to focus on. Do you think that the impetus and the emphasis given by the government has been absolutely great in making sure that, the zeal and the enthusiasm with which this industry is going to change India doesn't die down?
Yes, yeah, Vinit, definitely it's been a happy development that the government, after decades of waiting, has given so much importance to make sure that India develops a semiconductor ecosystem, including the cream of the cream, the fabs. To add on to what you first said, the Vedanta for FoxConn breakup, so to speak, somebody told me that the JV was signed on a Valentine's Day, so this was a breakup. But that's not at all a blow to India, because the fact of the matter is FoxConn does not have the technology, or it's not a high volume manufacturing fab at all. It is an EMS company. In fact, what is surprising is that Vedanta tied with FoxConn in the first place. What Vedanta needs is the technology from a high volume manufacturing fab, either a pure play foundry or an integrated device manufacturing. So if they have that license, they can still reapply. It's rumored that they have a license for 40 nanometer from ST Microelectronics. So they can reapply. If FoxConn is interested to apply again, even they will need a license or a partnership with a high volume manufacturing fab as far as silicon fabs are concerned. So in some ways, the split actually helps both Vedanta, and if FoxConn is applying again with a reputed partner, if they get one, more the better.
Okay. All right. Sumit Peer, this is obviously not the end of India's, endeavor towards semiconductor manufacturing. But the fact of the matter is that during COVID days, there has been a great talk about how just dependency on China crippled the world. The world was literally crippled with, half of the items which we use today not being available, as, a lack of semiconductors precipitated that. Do you think India is on the verge of making sure that such a dependency is created towards us and the supply chain, routes are never compromised again?
Vinny, thank you for having me on your show. Well, Vinny, if you look at it, the semiconductor is the lifeblood of any kind of electronics we use. Your camera, my laptop, your phone, my phone, everything, even fridge, refrigerator, the car, nothing works without the semiconductor. That's as simple as that. Traditionally, this has been a business where India was not there. But remember, a couple of months back, Rajiv Chandrasekhar ji and the Honorable Electronics Minister, they announced a scheme where India is going to invest from $13 to $30 billion for the industry to set up. And on that, they also made an announcement by 2026, which is 3 years down the line, we'll be exporting $300 billion worth of electronics from India once we have the semiconductor piece in our control. So what do you need for a semiconductor plant? Usually the minimum investment is around $20 billion. It can go to $120 billion for a plant. You need inert gases, you need dust-free environment, you need these raw materials, you need a lot of minerals. And one plant can take around 100,000 employees. So they're quite big. So a big land mass needs to be allocated for them. So the Indian government did the initiative, and they've also announced that up to in certain categories of the semiconductors, we are ready to fund your capex by up to 50%. Now, if you look at this Vedanta and FoxConn joint JV, Vedanta is typically a company into national resources. FoxConn is one of the biggest contract manufacturers in the world, and they're already making Apple iPhones in India, and they have committed to make 20 million iPhones this year. So commitments of FoxConn are there. Vedanta, we all know, Anil Agarwalji, I don't have to introduce him. So that is there. So this joint venture was there with the idea they will get into it. But eventually they discovered that a missing piece is missing. Where will the technology come from? Who is the technology partner? Then both said that let's realize the sprint. But the bigger story in that is, Vineet, if you look at it, because of the incentives of the government of India, the scheme for particular kind of semiconductors, what Foxconn did, they announced a couple of days back that we are exiting the JV. And today Foxconn has announced already, or yesterday, they're re-entering and applying for that license because they want that incentive part to come directly to Foxconn. If I can do the broad level, the mathematics, let's say as a joint venture, we are putting $20 billion and hypothetically $10 billion came as a government subsidy to you. So Foxconn gets a benefit of 5 and Vedanta gets a benefit of 5. Now, if I come individually at Foxconn and I'm investing $20 billion, it's not a big for Foxconn. Now my benefit is $10 billion. So this splitting up is adding to the capability. This is not a setback for India. This is not what people have been assuming, great setback for India. There's nothing like that. Foxconn has its manufacturing capabilities. Vedanta is a rich company, Vedanta, and they know how to manage raw materials. They know how to manage supply chains. Both can invest this $20 billion. Both need technology partners. So in place of one joint venture, we can have two different companies manufacturing semiconductors in India. And if you talk of the market we need, if you look at the car market, this year we are going to sell 1 to 2 million less units of cars because it's not of any capability because we are short of chips. And to give you more idea about it, let's say my laptop, which costs approximately £1 lakh today, the day we start manufacturing the semiconductors in India, this will come to 40,000 rupees. That is the difference. It will reduce our dependence on American supply chains and especially Chinese supply chains. The Taiwanese manufacture all their semiconductors in China. The biggest investor in China is Taiwan, and one of the key industries is semiconductor because Taiwan doesn't have that kind of space. But the number one in the world is Intel. It is Americans, it's Koreans, and it is Taiwanese and Japanese to some extent who are dominating this market. And there are already some higher-end semiconductors. I can't remember the name of the chipsets, but they already have been told to Taiwan and some other manufacturers by the Americans, look, you cannot manufacture them in Taiwan. They have to move to some other place. So in that way, India is a natural place where all this higher-end manufacturing will come, especially the semiconductors which are good for your image recognition, facial recognition and all. They will not be manufactured even in Taiwan. The American companies already said, no, we are not going to manufacture. That is the American law. And even the machines which were used to manufacture in Taiwan, embargo has been placed on them. They can't be sold to China. They can't be sold to Taiwan. So all that is going to come to India. That is a natural progression. So this is not a drawback for India. It is only that we are dividing our forces. It is let's split up and conquer more. We should not see it as a division because both of them are going to come up with plants in India. As I told you, the minimum investment in the plant is $20 billion. And if you look at some of the higher-end plants of Intel, it's up to $120 billion.
Sumitji, I would really request you, caution you not to quote such figures. Fabs are also not a monolithic thing. A 40,000 capacity 65 nanometer analog fab will cost only about $3 to $4 billion. A 40 nanometer fab will cost only about $5 to $6 billion. What TSMC is opening in Japan, a 28 nanometer fab costs only about $8 billion. One request I have for all the panelists is please don't quote random figures. And even in Vedanta's announced $20 billion,
Okay,
it was
all
not
right,
all
Mr.
for
Okay, okay,
semiconductor
all right,
No,
okay.
no,
When,
no, no.
when your turn
Can
comes,
you
okay, please, okay. When your turn comes, you can counter them and rebut them. Please don't do it midway their sentence. They allowed you to finish off your sentence. Please show them the same courtesy. Go ahead, Sumit, finish your point.
I am giving up. I'm not a specialist in how many nanometers and how many nanocentimeters. That's not my area, but I'm talking about the broad line semiconductor industry as such. There's a lot of information available on the internet.
I
What
understand
is
the
the amount
problem is such unsubstantiated statements
Let
have
him finish
hurt
his
India
point.
in the
Let him
past,
finish his point.
right?
Let him finish his
Sorry,
point.
sorry, but
Let him finish his
I have
point.
to
Please
make
don't
my point.
interrupt. Please don't
No,
intervene.
Arunji, there was
Sure,
a
sure.
number
Please
of
don't
20
intervene.
billion
Please don't
dollars
interrupt the middle. Let him finish his points. You will be given an opportunity to speak.
Arunji, there was a number of $20 billion given by the JV. I did not invent the number. This number did not come out of
Out
my
of that, you have to study something, right? It's not all for semiconductor
Okay,
fabs.
all right.
I'm not getting into that. I'm talking of $20 billion. I know
It's
the
not
number
for
is
semi-
$20
it's
billion.
not for-
Okay,
it's
okay. I
not-
want Mr.
it's not only
Bhattacharya to
for-
come in
Arunji,
now.
no.
Okay, Arun,
Let's
one
not
second.
beat around the bush. Let's not beat around the bush.
Mr.
The number is there.
Mr.
out in
Arun,
the
I don't
open.
appreciate this. Mr. Arun, I don't appreciate this. Just barging into the middle of a sentence. Please don't do that again. Mr. Bhattacharya, if I can come to you.
Sure. I think just taking the discussion forward, obviously there is a challenge in terms of the numbers we're talking about, but ignoring that, the bigger picture that's being discussed essentially is where does India stand, and is it a setback that one of the key contenders for setting up a semiconductor plant in India
Has backed
seems
out.
so clearly, it has not fallen apart in that sense. I mean, they're split, but they both stand to gain. Now, let's look at really what happened. Even in terms of technology, they did get a technology player for the 40 nanometer plant that they had proposed. In fact, that proposal is lying with the ministry. They're actually evaluating that proposal. I don't know how it will be looked at now that the JV has split, but they did have a partner for 40 nanometer. And bulk of the semiconductors is at 40 nanometer, if not at 65 nanometer, in fact, because for your washing machines and for your low-end products, where power is not an issue and you don't need too much of compute power, you can do with the older semiconductors, and that really is, in terms of volume, that's bulk of the semiconductors needed. Now, in terms of value, obviously 28 nanometer was what the JV was looking at. Entities like Intel are currently working at 4 nanometer. They're trying to put together the 4 nanometer fab, which are in fact handcrafted because you don't have too much of automation in creating those kind of manufacturing facilities. So for India to fit in, the 40 to 28 nanometer was a sweet spot. Somehow they could not find a partner for the 28 nanometer, and that's not the end of the world. As Arun was mentioning, the ecosystem for semiconductors is not just the fab, but the gases around it, the design around it, the entire fabrication part of it. There's a large ecosystem around semiconductors that still needs to be created. Obviously, the semiconductor plant in that sense becomes an anchor and becomes a mothership around which this ecosystem starts developing. For example, the gases itself are extremely large ecosystem, and they need to be co-located with the plant itself. And it's a chicken and egg problem. If the plant is not there, nobody will put the gases in, and if the gases are not there, you can't put the plant in, and therefore the whole ecosystem has to be invested at one go when it's the first time that that ecosystem is coming up in any country, which is where the 50% of the project cost being put up by the being taken up by the government was a terrific step forward. And this is the third attempt by the government, by the way, in the last 12, 13 years. This is a third attempt. And we really hope that this succeeds, because there's not just the issue of the world depending on India. It's about India depending on India. We cannot afford under any circumstances, especially when you see that the geopolitical situation has become quite unstable in the last 3-4 years. We just cannot depend on on supply chain and ecosystems which are outside of the country. For the sake of financial and commercial security of this country, we need to have semiconductors being built end to end within this country. And as a next step, if you can get the world to also lift off the semiconductors from India, it will be very, very helpful. Also, because semiconductors is a business of scale, of massive scale. And if we do not have 90% plus kind of a liftoff from the semiconductor fab, and if its capacity is not really running above 95% for that matter, you cannot be profitable. And hence, it's very important that we have buyback arrangements. We have liftoff from India for the global supply, and we become a very important part of the global supply chain. And therefore, ensuring that these fabs come on stream very quickly is very, very critical for India.
Gautam, how do you perceive this? Obviously, like has been enunciated by some of our previous panelists, that it is a setback, but every setback for a country like India also needs to be tweaked into an opportunity.
Well, my own perception was that Vedanta wasn't coming up with the money, and that was the major rub. FoxConn is quick on the announcement that it is coming through on its own and will look for other partners. The obvious, thing that is going around are the big boys, the Ambanis, the Tatas, the Adanis, who will not face any financial issues and could join in with this project even at a later stage. The initial incentive is attractive, but from the Indian point of view, it's dynamic. We've never done it before, but it isn't the reason why they set up one of these things. It is because of the potential of domestic consumption in India that anybody would come here. And second on the list is to get away from China, where, while they continue in China, they also want another leg elsewhere. And India is going up very fast in the Western stake in terms of an ally in this region. There is no doubt about it. If you see the French visit, it almost rivals the US visit in terms of the bag of goodies that Prime Minister Modi is expected to come back with. As far as the entire ecosystem developing, it's late as usual in the Indian context, but we can learn from many people before us and probably pick up speed in the middle. And of course, it has excellent employment potential. Of course, after the requisite number of people are trained in this particular field, which is quite specialized. And similarly, there are other fields coming in, the AI and so on, where the training is of a different order from what we've been used to. But Indians are not only very good English speakers, they are technically proficient, they learn fast, and I was reading a piece about a similar semiconductor plant in Dresden, Germany, where most of the employees are Indians who've gone there to get a diploma and then stayed on to be employees with their plant over there. So this is a big advantage for Indians, and we have a major supply of people as well. So it's very early days for us, but I'm pretty sure that as the time goes on, the momentum will pick up. Vinny.
Mr. Sardana, well, let's not harp on what kind of a setback this exit has been for Vedanta and FoxConn. But the fact of the matter is, like Mr. Bhattacharya pointed out, that for India to be Atmanirbhar and for India, to be astutely ready for any kind of a self-dependent ecosystem, having these semiconductor industry inputs is absolutely important.
You're right. See, we have to appreciate two things here. Semiconductor is nothing to do per se when you talk about that it needs money. Every business needs money. Reliance has money, Adani has money, banks are sitting there to fund. That is not an issue. Today, the world decisions are based on intellectual property. Now, today, when you are trying to work on IPR issues with a joint venture partner, take a scenario, FoxConn versus Vedanta. They are joint venture partner. Who is bringing IPR? that company will must have an upper hand in today's global scenario. Money is available. Money nobody bothers about nowadays. Government is giving subsidy. You can get loan. You can get from anywhere. So money is never a criteria in today's business decision. Issue is who has the innovation, who has the research capability. Because please appreciate, as the world is moving into, if I say industry 4.0, it will be fully loaded with all forms of chips and softwares. And for that, like you are today talking about textile, you're talking of rubber, you're talking of plastic, all will have some form of a semiconductor embedded into it. That will be dependent on the capability, what is the micron size, because as you are becoming miniature, you need better and better strategic technologies or critical technologies like semiconductor with a much lower nanometer. But today we are talking about 4 nanometer. It can go further down depending on the advancements in other new materials which are emerging. Now, what we have to look at in the whole process, FoxConn knows it that they have the biggest market. They themselves are the biggest consumer of semiconductor. Now, what they have to do is they have to invest in manufacturing. Sensible business decision is, I have money, I can source the technology. Do I really need a partner for like a Vedanta, and for what? You don't need technically. Maybe it was a political call that there is an Indian company called Vedanta or Tatas or Adanis or Ambanis or anybody, just to have a political correctness. But fact of the matter is, in today's globalized economy, you don't need even that. So if FoxConn is going alone with their own investments, with a technology partnership with other vendors, and set up a manufacturing base in India, produce semiconductor, use it for all the IT components or electronic-based industry in India or around the world, it makes more business sense to FoxConn because profit is in billions of dollars. Today, one of the biggest market is about $3 trillion of IT product which are embedded with, this semiconductors. So are you willing to part that huge profit with Vedanta as a business decision? Even if I am the chairman of a FoxConn, I'll say, no need. Why I need Vedanta technically? So this is sensible decision in one way from FoxConn point of view. Now, important point is Vedanta and Tatas and Indian companies, can they create a conglomerate, become a user as well as producer of a semiconductor so that they can give a competition to companies like FoxConn? Otherwise, FoxConn will become a monopoly supplier in one sense. They will produce the technology, they will use the technology, and they will decide the MRP. Now, it may say in one sense that you are not importing semiconductors, but definitely royalty payments are always there. So you have to think strategically. These are not normal business decisions like a JV partner has gone away and I will buy from somewhere and import from somewhere and trade from somewhere. These decisions are strategic decisions. And today with emerging technologies in a globalized economy, focus is intellectual property, emerging markets, new researches. Nothing to do with money. Money is in surplus in the world today. So one has to look from that angle. So my way of looking at is that this is a normal course of business. It is good FoxConn is coming independently. It is good for them, good for India. But what will be more interesting, what Vedanta will do now? Absolutely. Will they continue? Who will be their technology partner? Which industry they will focus on? And who will be their customers? So challenge is not for FoxConn. Challenge is for Vedanta. Absolutely. And that is what we have to look at.
And Sumit, the other thing to perhaps ponder over is that why did India, sort of take the late bus into, getting ready for this industry?
Vineet, it's all about the political will. You must have a leader like Prime Minister Modi with a vision, who must put money, who must have the vision, who talks of Atmanirbhar Bharat. When Modi ji talked about Make in India, people used to make fun of it. Rahul Gandhi ji used to share, sher ke andar kuch chakke chal rahe. And what is Atmanirbhar Bharat? They went all fun of it. Now, when MROs are coming to India, when aviation is coming to India, when the Lockheed Martin is starting its third MRO center in India, when Rafales will be serviced in India, when India has become an aviation hub, when our domestic industry is increasing, it is the vision of the Prime Minister, it is the zeal of the Prime Minister, it is that clarion call of Atmanirbharta and Make in India. That is why, as an outcome of that, you looked into why should we have reliance on China, or for that matter, anything. When we are making things here, see how many projects are coming with the technology transfer here. See the latest engine deal which we do with GE, it is with a full technology transfer, and what we are going to sign with French for the submarines, and one more jet engine that will be again on a technology transfer. Now the Rafale, this drones which were MQ-9s, they will be manufactured by Kalyani in India. So this kind of a vision is the political zeal and the will which the Prime Minister of India brought to the table, and his squadron of ministers were directed accordingly to do the job. Was not the capability. There was not the political will, because there was a Rajniti of cut and commission. When you start manufacturing in India and doing in India, cut and commission to aayega nahi. So to protect that cut and commission, it was like Bofors gun. We did not have a howitzer gun for 36 years, but we were very happy with it. So when it wins with the Rafale, there was a huge campaign on Chokidar, Shore and all that. Amidst that, if you look at the tradition of India, Rafale have been dumped. Still, Prime Minister went and got, because it is in the national interest of India. You need a leader, a politician who looks for the national interest of India.
Okay,
not
understood, Sumit. Absolutely, you're quite right. We've also run out of time. Like I said earlier on, this is not a setback, but a great opportunity for India to capitalize.
For more such videos, subscribe to the NewsX YouTube channel, hit the bell icon.